Hello friends, welcome to learning sessions, and this is the second part related to the green finance and further the green and sustainable financing out there. So if you have not gone through the first video, so kindly do watch the first part on our YouTube channel. Do subscribe right now and press the bell notification icon so that you get updated whenever we upload the new videos. The full courses are available. You'll be getting access to all the things, full course videos, case study videos, chapter wise questions, mock tests, each and everything is available. Do enroll right now and start preparing for the same, and the all papers PDFs are available for free of cost just on sign up. So simply do sign up on our website iibf.info, or you can simply just visit to the caib.learningsessions.in. Both the links are available in the description below, and further simply on sign up you'll be getting all the access to all the 9 papers of CIB PDFs. So do enroll right now and start preparing for the same. So let's start the session over here, and it's related to international best practices toward the green finance. Now, there are 4 basic categories related to the same. First of all, it's related to sustainability disclosure. That it basically applies to whatsoever institutions or enterprises are financial enterprises or non-financial enterprises. It basically applies to the same, right? If you're basically going for a green finance, we basically want to go for a green finance, even if this particular institution is a particular financial company or non-financial enterprise, we will be looking for the same, that what are the different risks which are associated with the same. So we'll be looking for the ESG criteria. E is for environment, S is for social, G for governance risk. So whatsoever the risk which will be associated with the same, those must be reported. So those must be disclosed. That's related to sustainability disclosure. That it's particular having a disclosure out there, right? Related to it can be sustaining, right? That's a further. So for the second one, it's related to directed and concessional lending, right? Now in different nations, national lending is done, that you basically, if you're going to get a green finance, definitely it will be at a lower rate. And the third one is related to micro and macro prudential rules, right? So these rules are placed on various types of institutions out there, whether those are financial institutions or non-financial institutions. Like particularly China started applying credit restrictions. Like if you're getting the businesses for some other purposes, you won't be getting that much finance, but if you're getting the loan for some greenfield project, you'll be getting a huge finance, right? That's particularly to micro and macro potential rules which can be placed. And further, the fourth best practice actually related to formation of environmentally responsible financial institutions. So you'll be covering or basically be creating such institutions which are particularly there for environmental purposes over there, which are having the responsibility for the same, right? So these are the 4 best international practices. One, it's related to disclosures. Other one, it's related to concessional lending. Third, it's related to micro and macro potentials. And for the fourth one, it's related to creating environmentally responsible financial institutions. Further, it's related to public policy in India. Public policy in India. Now, CSR, that is actually the corporate social responsibility, and for the sustainable development non-financing report, which is actually related to what is the role of banks in related to sustainability and for the maintaining and managing the environment out there. A notification was given by the Reserve Bank of India, which actually highlights that what is the significance, that you'll be protecting the environment, and further related to the issues which you can be facing due to the global warming or due to the climate change out there. So NAPCC, that is related to National Action Plan on Climate Change, that was developed in 2008. Now kindly please note down the timelines out there. I'm just writing over there. So NAPCC, that's related to National Action Plan on Climate Change, that plan was developed in 2008 out there, right? And further, it outlined the general policy framework, that was what the general policy framework or the general guidelines we must be having related to the effect of the climate change on our policy, right? That was particularly guided in NAPCC report, right? And further, it's related to in the Ministry of Finance. If we're talking about the Ministry of Finance, a climate change finance unit was created. Climate change finance unit, that is CCFU, was created in 2011, so that it can be serving as a coordinating agency. First one, it's related to NAPCC in 2008. Second one, it's related to CCFU in 2011 over there. And further, there was introduction of sustainability disclosure related to the transparency must be there. So if you want to take up your particular project, whether it be operational and will not be having any bad impact on the environment out there, so that was a disclosure related that was to be given, right? And for the in 2012 also, in 2012, the SEBI actually made it actually required for the top listed 100 companies. In 2012, SEBI made it actually mandatory for top listed 100 companies based upon the market capitalization on Bombay Stock Exchange and National Stock Exchange that they need to publish their responsibility reports. So basically, whatsoever the business responsibility report, that is BRR, that was mandatorily to be issued, right? And further, in 2017, SEBI published guidelines for issuance of the green bonds. In 2017, there came the issuance of green bonds by SEBI. Green bonds by SEBI. The notification was given by SEBI, right? And also the Companies Act 2013 actually does require the businesses to report annually. Their report related to that how they are fulfilling the corporate social responsibilities. So this is actually the fifth one related to the Companies Act. Related to the Companies Act 2013 that actually requires a corporate that how they are fulfilling the requirements of the CSR, that is a corporate social responsibility, right? And the requirement was enforced by MCA, which was released in October 2017, which basically required what? So in 2017, let me write it down. Ministry of Corporate Affairs in 2017, they actually made it required by the board of directors that they should be gathered together at least once in a year so as to discuss over the ESG, that how to mitigate the risk with according related to the ESG over there, how they can be managing the different risk and what should be their policy related to it. Okay, so that was the sixth point. So first one, it was related to NAPCC, which basically gave a general framework in particular 2011 establishment of the CCFU in Ministry of Finance. In 2012, there is particularly business reporting report was to be given, business responsibility report that was to be published, that was mandatory by SEBI over there. In 2017, green bond notification was given by SEBI, and further in 2013 Companies Act 2013, customers corporate social responsibility was talked about. And further in 2017, the Minister of Corporate Affairs basically asked the directors of the company so as to meet at least once in a year so as to discuss about the risk management related to ESG out there, related to strategy over there. And after that, it's related to Paris Agreement, which is quite important to understand. It's related to the Paris Agreement. What does it indicate? It indicates that as per the Paris Agreement that happened there in 2015, that actually happened there in 2015. Basically, what was the agenda? That we want to reduce the intensity of the greenhouse emissions. So whatsoever the greenhouse emissions are there, that's a emission of the greenhouse gases over there, we want to reduce that particular emission by 33 to 35% of whatsoever the emissions were there in the year 2005. So whatsoever the emissions were significant to the year 2005, we want to reduce the that particular greenhouse emission by 30 to 35% by the year 2030, and also we want to basically generate energy up to the requirements of 40%. So whatsoever the energy which is particularly being required, we want to generate energy 40% of the same by using the renewable energy form, by using the installed electric power capacity from the non-fossil resources, from the renewable resources or from non-fossil resources. And that is also to be done by 2030. And we want to achieve the net zero carbon emission by year 2070. Okay, so that was as per the Paris Agreement 2015. Further, in the majority of the states, Government of India actually has providing a subsidy. Government is providing a subsidy that if you do install the solar rooftop panel, in that case you'll be getting 30% of the particular subsidy, and also up to 60% of the subsidy in the areas, also up to 70% of the subsidy in some areas, also related to some special category also. And also the recipients will be having an opportunity that they can be generating the electricity of their own, and what's of the excessive electricity that they will be generating, that they can be passing on that particular energy and further can be earning on the same basis. So their what's of the annual generation would be there, and further based upon that, for per unit they will be receiving up to rupees 2 of the revenue. Okay, for that particular purpose, the minimum annual generation should be more than 1100 kilowatt hour to 1500 kilowatt hour. So if you're basically fulfilling this particular criteria that you're generating energy more than this particular bracket over there, in that scenario you can be selling your energy and further you can be earning rupees 2 per unit, right? That's the main funder, and that's main benefit which is particularly given to the public, general public. And also government actually launched two phases of the FAME. Now, what is FAME? FAME is actually faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles. Government actually wants that we want to shift to the electric vehicles. We must be shifting to the electric vehicles out there, and for that particular purpose the FAME was actually launched in two phases, that is faster adoption and manufacturing of hybrid and electric vehicles, right? And that particular scheme was launched in two different years, 2015 and 2019. That the main goal was actually related to that we want to increase the flow, that we want to increase the flow of credit, that if you're basically going to get a electric vehicle, you'll be getting the loan at lower interest rate. That's the case that in normal loan you're getting at 7.80. For electric vehicle you'll be getting at 20 basis point less, that is for 7.60%. And also for a longer tenure, like in general case you can for getting a car loan for up to 7 years, but for electric vehicles it may be the case that you have provided the car loan for electric vehicle loan for 10 years even, right? So those benefits were given, so as to encourage the production also, right? And also developing the necessary infrastructure so that the production and the sale environmentally friendly vehicles can also be increased, right? That was the main thing related to it. Okay. And further it's related to government also initiated production linked incentive scheme. Government also launched PLI, that is production linked incentive scheme, that you basically if you are producing the electric vehicles you will getting some incentives. If it may be the case that lesser taxes are imposed or some subsidy you will be getting, something like that, right? And further in 2015 government also, the Reserve Bank of India also made changes to the priority sector lending, formations, right? Now in priority segment lending or priority sector lending, it will be covering the micro generation sector. So the micro generation sector, if you're particularly generating electricity at your place also, it will be covered under the renewable energy industry. So if you're a corporate, then the amount was doubled. Previously it was 15 crore, which was doubled to 30 crore, that you can get the loan up to 30 crore, which will be accountable to PSL. And further, if you're individual, you can get loan up to rupees 10 lakh for renewable energy purposes. You can get loan up to rupees 10 lakh. Let's say case you want to install a solar plant or a hydro plant, smaller hydro plant, micro generation plant over there, you'll be getting the loan up to 10 lakh over there, so as to invest in the renewable energy resources, right? And after that it's related to the greenwashing. Now this term is quite important. Now, greenwashing basically refers to excessive claims of environmental compliance. Excessive claim of the environmental compliance over there. This is said to be greenwashing. And IREDA, which is actually Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency. That is particularly an agency which is sponsored by the government of India. It promotes the investment in clean energy, and further it basically reveals its plan in 2016. In 2016, it revealed its plan that it will become the India's first green bank. It will become India's first green bank, that it will be investing into friendly projects over there, financing for the same, right? That is the IREDA, that is Indian Renewable Energy Development Agency, right? For its related to, for this particular purpose, the sustainable, for funding the sustainable infrastructure projects with bonds tenor which is more than 5 years. So whatsoever the green bonds or green finance bonds which are having the tenor more than 5 years, so the IIFCL, that is infrastructure, India Infrastructure Finance Corporation Limited, has also introduced a specific program which is known as a credit enhancement plan over there, right? So IREDA in 2016 announced that it will become the first green bank over there, and IIFCL, that is India Infrastructure Finance Corporation Limited, said particularly they launched a plan so as to particularly support the investment into the green bonds which are having a tenure for more than 5 years. It basically launched a plan that is said to be the green enhancement plan out there, right? And after that it's related to progress of green finance in India. It's related to the progress of green finance in India. So particularly it was related to, we wanted to increase the general awareness. We RBI basically included the small renewables energy sector into the PSL scheme, so that more lending, more finance is particularly done for the same. And also green bond notification was given by the SEBI out there. And after that, it's related to a debt security shall be considered as green or green debt securities if the funds raised through the issuance of the debt securities are used for, either they are used for the renewable energy or sustainable energy, either they are used for the clean transportation, for sustainable water management, for climate change adaptation, for energy efficiency, for sustainable waste management, for biodiversity conservation, or for any other category which is prescribed by the SEBI, right? So that all things, that all definitions are given by whom? Those are given by SEBI over there. And also the Security and Exchange Board of India that issued the green debt securities in India over there. And issuer on its discretion, he or they can be appointing for an independent reviewer. Like I told you, na, that a certificate can be obtained, that a certification can be obtained, right? So for that particular purpose, it's not mandatory that you need to appoint a certification or particularly a person who will be reviewing you. Certifier is not required. But if particular a corporate want to appoint a, if a corporate want to appoint a certifier or particularly a reviewer over there, they need to disclose the same thing, that they are going to appoint a certifier or particular reviewer. They need to disclose the same in their prospectus, right? That's a particularly thing out there. And further, it's related to disclosure requirement is actually related to the same. So whatsoever the green debt issuing securities, those must be complied with whatsoever the disclosure requirements are there. Those must be disclosed over there. So what must be disclosed? What things need to be disclosed? First, it's related to objective statement. So what does it mean? What do you mean by objective statement? That why do you want to issue the green debt? Why do you basically want to issue the green bonds over there? That must be disclosed. And further, what will be your decision making process? How your company is going to make the decision making process, how the decision making will be done, right? And further, it's related to what systems or procedures will be employed so as to track the deployment, that where the funds are being deployed. So what system will be making sure the deployment of system for deploying funds, system for deploying the funds out there. And further, details of utilization of funds, details of utilization of funds, that where the funds are being utilized, utilization of funds over there, where the proceeds are being used, right? And further, if you do appoint a certifier, if you do appoint a certifier, that's related to appointment of certifier. So if you are appointing a certifier, that must also be disclosed. That must also be disclosed. So these five things are to be disclosed. First of all, related to objective statement, how decision making will be done in your company over there, and what is the system of deployment of funds over there, and what will make sure the utilization of funds. And if you are basically appointing a third party certifier or reviewer, in that scenario, that must also be disclosed. Okay. So that is as per what? That is as per the SEBI issue and listing of debt security rules, regulations 2008, right? And those must be complied with. And after that, it's related to details to be provided in the half yearly and annual financial statements. Now, as per the same, the debt issuing companies on half yearly and annual financial statement basis. So whatsoever utilization they have done, that must be disclosed. And what is the detail of the unutilized funds, that must be disclosed. And that must be done on half yearly and yearly basis, half yearly and yearly basis, right? And in annual report, what must be listed? That list of projects or assets which you basically have used, we have invested, right? That must be indicated. And qualitative performance indicators, that what are the qualitative performance indicators, that related to statistics or something, okay, sorry, related to some data or some particular attributes of the same. And further, also quantitative performance measures, that what are the profits, what are the turnovers or something, these are to be indicated, right? Those must be indicated in your annual report. And also related to the measure of the method of particularly your assumptions. So when basically we undertake a project, it may be the case that we must have taken some assumptions out there, that we do assume that this will be working as such this, or this must be our projection out there. So whatsoever the assumptions which are taken over there, those must also be indicated, right? And for the how we are going to measure those particular assumptions over there, what are the metrics for the same, those must also be indicated. And further, if the issuer of the green debt securities or agent follows any of the globally accepted standards, let's say case there is a company which is actually following the globally accepted standards, globally assessed accepted standards over there. In that scenario, those particular standards must also be indicated, those must also be disclosed in the offer document over there, right? So these are the annual disclosures which you need to do, and further some of the information is to be provided on half yearly and yearly basis. Now what are the responsibilities of the issuer? Now as an issuer, you're basically issuing the debt securities. What are your responsibilities? First of all, you must be having a appropriate decision making policy. You must be having a appropriate decision making policy, that how the decisions are being made. That is the first part, right? And the second one, it's related to that we need to basically ensure that whatsoever the projects or assets which are funded by the proceeds of the green debt securities, you must be meeting up with the objectives. So whatsoever the objectives you have mentioned in your prospectus out there, those must be met up, right? That is the second thing. And third thing, that you need to utilize the proceeds, to utilize the proceeds as per indicated. It's not sure, it should not be the case that you basically said you will be purchasing the asset but you're not doing so. So that must not be done, okay? So whatsoever the decision process, you must be sticking to the same. You must be working as per the objective only, and further you must be utilizing the proceeds as per indicated in the prospectus only, right? And SEBI guidelines are in accordance with the three most fundamental global principles, that is the green bond principle, social bond responsible principle, and sustainable bond principle. So whatsoever the guidelines which are given by the SEBI over there, those are based upon three principles: green bond principle, social bond principle, and sustainable bond principle, right? Now after that, it's related to the business responsibility and sustainability report, that is BRSR, business responsibility report and sustainability report, right? So it is actually related to the top 1,000 listed entities which are actually listed on the stock exchange over there, and they need to basically provide an overview related to ESG, that how ESG is impacting their company and their financials, that must be indicated. And further, they also need to specify the techniques, they also need to specify the techniques, that what techniques they are employing so as to avoid these risks, so as to reduce these risks, so as to mitigate these risks, that must also be indicated, right? Okay, so first of all, it's related to what? It's related to section A, that's related to general disclosures. So when we're talking about the section A, it's related to the normal general disclosures, that indicates what, that whatsoever the listed entity, whatsoever their production or products or services are there, what operations they are leading into, who are their employees, what are their holdings, subsidiaries, etc. What is their corporate social responsibility, transparency, disclosure, compliances over there. In general, whatsoever the things they are dealing with, their assets, their worth, is something that must all be disclosed, right? That's related to section A. Section B deals with the management and process disclosures, that what process they are taking so as to take the decisions, and what is their governance structure over there, what is their leadership, what is their oversight or particular objectives over there, that must be disclosed, right? And the third one, it's related to principal wise performance disclosures, principal wise performance disclosures, that whatsoever your KPIs, that is key performance indicators, whatsoever your KPIs related to the 9 principles as given by the NGRBC, as given by the NGRBC. Now the 9 principles which were given by the national guidelines on responsible business conduct, your KPIs which are actually in line with those 9 principles over there, and further it classifies the KPIs into 2 subcategories out there, you need to disclose based upon the same, right? So section A is actually related to general disclosures, section B is related to management based disclosures and process disclosures, and section 3 is related to principle wise performance disclosures, which is actually associated with the 9 principles which were given by the NGRBC, and that basically subclassifies the KPIs into 2 subcategories over there. You need to basically tell the disclosures based upon the same, and these 2 categories are particularly the subcategories of the KPIs actually related to essential indicators, that is mandatory, and also the leadership indicators which are voluntary over there, right? And also why the particular statement, why the particular circular which was given by the SEBI in 2021, from beginning of the 2022-2023, BRSR is actually mandatory. It was actually made mandatory from 2022-2023 by the SEBI over there. So whatsoever the 1,000 top listed companies out there, they are to give the BR, that is a business responsibility, sustainability report out there that is to be given, and that is to be given in three different sections: A, B, C, general disclosure, and for the management and process disclosures, and for the third one it's related to the principal wise performance disclosures. Those is to be given over there, and these will be given based upon the nine principle, based upon the NGB and GRBC. And further it will be dividing the KPIs into two particular parts. One is related to essential indicators, and the other one is related to the leadership indicators. That's now meant mandatory, right? After that it's related to ESG related reports. Now ESG actually report based report is what, which will be covering the all the things, which will be covering all the things related to your ESG, all the things related to all the risk related to the ESG over there, related to environment, related to social, related to governance over there. So whatever the things are there, you have to basically give the disclosures and the reports related to the same, that particularly what different risks are there, what processes or what techniques you have particularly appointed so as to reduce them, avoid them, particularly remove them. That's actually related to it. Okay, so if you're basically talking about the environment, that what is a company's footprint, carbon footprint for the environment over there, that is to be taken care of. If we're talking about the social part, that are you considering the inequality between the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, etc., or there must be equality? And also basically covering, are you covering the racial diversity over there? If we're talking about the governance, it's related to that how the company's leadership is surrounded. Okay, and what is the executive pay or diversity in leadership over there? We must be considering different things, that issues, different issues that may be there, and we must be considering them up all, and further we must be reporting them up all, right? And after that it's related to by NDC, that is a nationally determined contribution. Government pledged to undertake the following. Government is actually undertaking what? By NDC. By NDC means nationally determined contribution. We are basically undertaking what? Government is undertaking what? That they must be having a, the all must be having a healthy and sustainable way of living, so as to adopt a climate friendly cleaner path over there, so as to reduce the emissions intensity of the GDP by 33 to 35% as of 2005 by 2020 30 out there, and so as to achieve 40% cumulative electric power installed capacity from non-fossil fuel based by 2030 out there, and further so as to create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2, equivalent to additional forest. We basically will be having more additional forest space and trees cover or tree covers over there, and by 2030 we'll be reducing reducing extra CO2 by 2.5 to 3 billion tons over there by 2030, and further so as to basically make India net zero emitting carbon emissions over there by 2070 out there, right? That is the main thing. And we have already talked about the Paris Agreement COP26 in 2016 over there, that we basically want to reduce the emissions by 2030. We basically want to use a non-fossil fuel based for 40% by 2030 over there, and particularly increase the renewable energy generation. Renewable energy generation is to be increased by the capacity gigawatt by 2030, and country to 500 gigawatt capacity by gigawatt capacity by 2030 out there, and to become carbon neutral and achieve net zero emissions by year 2070. That we have covered all over there, right? After that it's related to task force which was set up by the government. Now, the task force on the sustainable finance, which was set up by the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India out there, what is actually doing? What that particular task force is doing? So, task force actually has defined the framework related to how the sustainable finance will be working in India. It is actually establishing the pillars of the sustainable finance roadmap out there, and also it basically suggesting a draft taxonomy, that what different techniques or different categories can be used for the sustainable activities out there. It's basically creating a framework so as to risk assessment by the financial sector, that how we can assess the risk of the climate change or the environment change in for a financial sector out there. It also recommend ways to strengthen the resilience of the country's financial sector against the risks related to various climate risk out there. So it's basically giving the way out for the same, and also laying out ways so that how we can grow the sustainable finance in India, right? So task force is actually maintaining each and everything. Whether we are talking about the framework for the sustainable finance in India, it is doing the same. Whether we are talking about the establishing of the pillars of the same, it is doing the same. Whether we are talking about the categorization of the same, whether we're talking about the techniques to mitigate the risk, whether we're related to talking about the assessing the risk, it is actually doing each and everything, that how we can be managing risk, how we can be avoiding risk, what ways or alternates we can be taking, and further how we can make sustainable finance more growing in India, right? So those all things are being done in India over there, right? And further, what are the different challenges and possible policy measures which can be taken? First of all, it's related to borrowing cost. It's related to the borrowing cost. So when we are talking about the green bonds, so borrowing cost is much higher in case of green bonds rather than that of the other bonds over there, because the cost is actually remaining higher in case of green bonds, right? Because the time period is quite long, and for the risk associated with the same, so the borrowing cost is quite high over there. And further, borrowing cost and information irregularity is there. Same information, uniform information is not available, and that's a very important challenge that must be actually be that must be looked at, right? So that's particularly asymmetric or non-uniform information is actually available, that must be looked at. And further, it's related to market infrastructure development. Now we are having a large size of domestic market out there, but very much smaller saturation of the green bonds over there, right? So that's why there is a very huge opportunity which is still available to be tapped out there, which can be used, right? So we need to basically have the infrastructure for the same so that we can grow the market out there. And for the other public policies are there which must be taken care of, like designed to consume the less power, so we can be designing those particular buildings which are using less water, which are basically doing the water harvesting or water safeguarding, or we are safeguarding the energy resources over there, right? So those things can also be taken care of if we are talking about the challenges and possible policy measures which can be taken for climate change effectiveness, right? For this related to growth of regulatory framework, and it's related to network for greening the financial system, that is the GFS, network for greening the financial system, that is GFS. And what are the recommendations of GFS to the supervisors? Let's have a look at it. So what is GFS actually? This is network for greening the financial system, and there are some recommendations which were given by the GFS to the supervisors, that is as RBI is a supervisor regulator in India. Okay, so that's the fundamental to it. So how climate related and environmental risk transmit to the economy, that was the main thing. That, let's say case it's a climate risk, so we are saying that the climate is changing. Now this particular, how this particular risk can be transferred to our economy, and how further it can be impacting our economy, that's that particularly described by it. And further, they so as to develop a clear strategy, so as to establish an internal organization, so as to allocate adequate sources so as to address this particular risk. So whatsoever the different risks which are now transmitted by the climate economy, we must be having some organization which is assessing all those risks. It is assessing all those risks, and it is also letting us know that how we can be having a way out of the same, right? And also we must be looking at the exposures that we are facing, that particularly what are the vulnerable risks which are we are facing right now, what the potential losses may be there, we must be looking into the same. And also we must be having the supervisory expectations, so supervisor must be acting upon the thing that the transparency must be there. Every organization must be working on the part that the transparency is to be maintained, so a clear picture is available. Let's say case that if you're basically operating in some area, and particularly you're having some carbon prints out there, definitely you're impacting the environment, and definitely the environment will also be impacting you some in some manner out there, right? So that particular cost must be indicated, and also whatsoever the risk which are being imposed, those must be indicated, right? So there must be a transparent approach for the same. And we must be ensuring the management of all these risks over there, how this particular risk can be looked into. So in broad manner, we can say that GFS actually gave a GFS recommended the supervisors that related to that how the environment is actually impacting the economy. And further, we must be having some specific institution which will be looking into all the things, which will be assessing those risks, which will be letting us know that how we can reduce those risks. And particularly the transparent manner, transparency must be there in the financial institutions. And ultimately related to, we must be having the adequate management of this particular risk, right? And after that, it's related to prudential risks for the banks out there, right? Now in April 2020, in April 2020, the Basel Committee published a stock take report prepared by its high level task force. So there was a task force in Basel Committee, and basically published a report based upon the same, based upon the climate related financial risks. So what are the climate related financial risks are there? This particular report was given by the Basel Committee over there. And in May 2020, the Central Bank and Supervisor Network for Greening of the Financial System, that is NGFS, published a guide. So in 2020, they particularly, first of all, a report was received by the task force of the Basel Committee, and particularly in 2020, the banks and NGFS, that is networking for the greening of financial system over there, they particularly submitted a report. They particularly published a guide for the same for the supervisors over there on integrating the climate change into the prudential supervision. Okay. Now, let's have a look at the national efforts towards the green and sustainable financing. Now, I told you already that as per the Paris Agreement, India committed that by 2070 India will become carbon neutral and further will be having zero net carbon emissions. And further, so as to use a national investment by including so-called green infrastructure InvITs, like particularly we are using the InvITs, that is infrastructure bonds out there, right? We will be using the same. We'll be using the InvITs so that we can be having the money from the different sector. Even the retail investors and passive investors can be investing into the same, and ultimately that particular money will be invested into greenfield projects over there, and ultimately we can revive our environment out there, right? And also RBI actually published particularly a notification highlighting that how the financial institutions and they must be putting up the efforts related to so as to achieve the sustainable development in the year 2007. So that particular notification was given by the Reserve Bank of India. And also there are some equator principles. Equator principle says what? So they basically offer a framework. If we talk about the equator principles, let me just write it down. If we talk about the equator principles, they do what? They actually gave us a framework. They gave us a framework that how we can be recognizing, how we can be managing, how we can be evaluating the risk related to environment and society while monetizing the project. So when we are monetizing the projects, when we are monetizing a project, let's say we are monetizing a project over there, we are pouring money into it. Now what are the different risks which are associated with it, and how these particular risks are going to impact the society, and further what will be, what effect they will be having on the climate out there, and how we can be evaluating those risks, how we can recognize those risks, how we can manage those risks. That must be indicated, and that is set to be the equator principle, that whatsoever money you are putting, you must also be looking on the other side also, right? In 2016, RBI basically had the opportunity to produce a study of the lines sustainable financial systems in partnership with the UNEP, that's related to United Nations Environment Program over there. And also that was all related to RBI, what RBI has done so far. Okay, so that was related to RBI, that RBI gave a point notification in 2007, and for the its related equator principle. In 2016, RBI actually published a note along with UNEP, and further it's related to companies at 2013. I already told you there is particularly a mandatory provision that actually requires the large capital companies so as to donate 2% of their annual profits. So let's say case there is a large capital company, and for the whatsoever their annual profit is 2% of the same, 2% of the annual profit of a large capital company must be invested as CSR, that is corporate social responsibility, right? As per for those particular initiatives out there. And for the government of India actually has established a number of plans, a number of funds related to same that, so that the businesses can be encouraged, organization can be encouraged, so that they can go for the environmentally friendly practices out there, and further through the perform, achieve and trade, that is PAT, that is perform, achieve and trade through PAT over there. Government has incorporated carbon trading into its overall policy framework, that whatsoever our over policy framework, that whatsoever the policy will be there, government is actually implementing the PAT. That's we basically want to reduce our carbon footprint, right? That's main fundamental related to it. And also RBI has actually authorized the lending for renewable projects by corporations. Now previously the amount was particularly 15 crore. Now it has been increased to 30 crore for the renewable energy, and for the individual households the amount is up to 10 lakhs if you're basically using for the renewable energy purposes over there, right? And for the in 2021, Reserve Bank of India became a member of NGFS, that is Network of Greening of Finance System over there. Okay, that's particularly the NGFS over there. The 20 in 2021, Reserve Bank of India became the partner of the same, and particularly it was all related to the particular sustainability and further the part of India in the same, right? Now green bonds which are having the maturity even longer than 10 years, those are being issued by the big houses in India, big businesses in India, like Adani Power Finance Company, etc., right? After that it's related to the Reserve Bank of India views on climate risk and sustainable finance. So as I told you that RBI become a part of NGFS, became a part of NGFS, that is Network for Greening of the Financial System, in 2021 out there. And also RBI represented itself in G20 related to Sustainable Finance Working Group, right? It basically represented in Sustainable sustainable finance working group over there. And further, it also, the RBI also represented in BCBS over there. And further, in May 2021, RBI set up a sustainable finance group. RBI set up in 2021 sustainable finance group, that is SFG over there, within the Department of Regulation. So within the Department of Regulation in Reserve Bank of India, RBI set up the SFG, that is a sustainable finance group out there, so that particularly they can giving the initiatives related to the same, that how we can be dealing with the climate risk and sustainable finance can be improved and grow, and particularly can be growing in India out there. And SFG will be providing the suggestions, strategies related to evolving the regulatory framework out there. And further, it will be basically including the disclosures, that what things are to be disclosed. And further, it will also be regulating the regulated entity out there under the Department of Regulation itself. Okay, so that's the main funda related to it. Okay, so that will be all related to the green and sustainable financing. I hope that you must have learned the lecture well. So do rate this video out of 10, and do like this video and share this video among your friends and colleagues who have been preparing for CAIIB 2024. Do visit the website caib.learningsessions.in, and just on sign up you'll be getting access to free PDF. So do sign up right now and start preparing for the same. You can also be finding the link in the description out there. So that will be all. Thank you so much, and see you again in the next video.